Jeremy Lupierco, City of Walnut Creek and Transpac.
Ruby Horda, County Connection.
James Hinkamp, City of Lafayette, on behalf of SWAT.
Jerry Fay, Contra Costa County.
Tom Horea, Stride Alta Transit.
Michael Tanner, BART.
Lynn Filson, City of Antioch.
Eric Hughes, City of Pleasant Hill.
Kevin Rohani, City of Oakley.
Andy Dillard, Town of Danville.
Thank you. Next item up is public comment. I understand we have one speaker.
My name is Dave Campbell, Advocacy Director with Bike East Bay, and also working with many groups on the Yes on Measure X campaign, the Contra Costa County Transportation Expenditure Plan. I know as public servants you cannot engage in such a campaign, but when you go home this evening as a private resident and you would like to get involved as a volunteer, Dave at bikeeastbay.org is one way you can get in touch with me. And we are opening a field office in Walnut Creek this week. We have a field office open in Richmond as well, and we'll have one in Antioch soon. And so I hope to see some friendly faces in those offices helping us spread the word. Again, it's Dave at bikeeastbay.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Item C, approval of summary of actions. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Moving on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to a regular agenda. Item 3, project monitoring.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. The monitoring reports starts on page 3-7 for the OBAC projects. Just wanted to highlight that there are 8 projects programmed for 17. 2 of them have requested to be moved, and 1 has already been obligated, so that leaves 5 that needs to complete their package and E76 package and sent to Caltrans by November 1st, which is about 6 weeks away. So please, if you're on the list, your project is on the list, please be mindful of that schedule and continue to provide me dates as you progress so we can make sure that all the milestones are recorded here and that we're monitoring them accurately. And that's about it. If you have any questions, I can take them at this time.
Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Stephanie. Moving on to item number 4. I'm not going to read all that, Matt. I'm just going to turn it over to you.
I'll do the talking. Thank you. And I'm here to present not ours, but MTC's proposed Plan Bay Area 2040, their draft preferred scenario that will feed into the 2017 RTP. Plan Bay Area 2040 is differentiated from the last one, Plan Bay Area. So now it's Plan Bay Area 2040. So hopefully I won't confuse you. I'll actually refer to the last one as the 2013 RTP as to not confuse you, because I'll be referring back to that one. So basically on August 30th, the regional agencies, MTC and ABAG, issued a memo regarding the draft preferred scenario, and that is on page 4, let's see, 4.6 of your packet. And this basically goes into the land use scenario that they've proposed. There's also the transportation side of things that I'll get into a little in my presentation here. This memo outlined how they put together the draft land use allocations and includes allocations at the city level and at the PDA level. So on page 412, you can see the draft allocations for Contra Costa by city and by PDA. The county has been grouped into one line item at the bottom, so they have to do some digging into the details to figure out what has been allocated where, but all this is available for you to look at, and I've got some supporting materials in the packet that kind of show the comparisons between the 2013 RTP and this draft land use allocation, and those tables at the city level are on page 4 or 5, and we have RTPC level allocations on page 4 or 4. And I should note, if you're looking at those two sets of tables and comparing the two, you'll see that the Contra Costa totals don't match between the two sets of tables, and that's because the city level forecasts come straight from ABAG. The RTPC level forecasts we had to put together from the modeling files from MTC, and they don't quite line up, and we've notified MTC of this, and so they're looking into that. So there are some minor differences, but I encourage you to focus on the city level forecasts. The RTPC level CCT likes to look at those level forecasts, but they probably don't mean as much to the individual cities. So now I'm going to reach over here and turn on the projector. Can you guys see the screen in front? Is that on? This is MTC's presentation that they gave yesterday to our planning directors. They were in this room yesterday, so most of your cities were here. And so they're aware of what's going on, but if not, here it is, and I apologize for those of you who were here yesterday. I'll do my best impression of an MTC employee. Sorry, Stephanie. And we've thrown some local data in there as well, so it's not entirely the MTC presentation. But so this is the 24-year plan for growth and investment. Growth part is the land use. So basically, here they are documenting kind of the last few years since the last RTP, or since since the 2010 census. Basically, over 500,000 jobs have been added in the Bay, and that's compared to only 65,000 housing units. So you can understand why traffic is as bad as it is today. MTC, for this purpose, has kind of divided the Bay up into 3 geographies. The reddish color is the core big cities, the 3 big cities. The blue are what they call Bayside, and it's West Contra Costa, West Alameda, and the peninsula, and a little bit of Marin and Solano. And then the green color is what they call the inland, coastal, and delta cities. That's the rest of Contra Costa, basically central, east, and southwest, and then the more inland areas around the Bay. And the sidebar over at the right are some interesting facts. So the big 3 cities have created 1 housing unit for every job that's been created. In the Bayside areas, 1 housing unit for every 15 jobs. And inland has actually done a better job in terms of jobs housing balance. They've created 1 housing unit for every 3 jobs created. Here's a look at how the transportation has been keeping up with the growth. BART ridership and transit ridership in general has eclipsed the dot-com boom of the late 90s and early aughts. As you can see, over there is where the last peak was, and now we're up here. and Caltrain is just kind of an anomaly because they've done so much with their service over the last 10 years or so. So they're really booming, but congestion is also booming. Okay, so the first step in developing the RTP was for MTC and ABAG to put together a land use growth scenario. They started off with the no project alternative, and then they reached out to and actually they actually started off with Plan Bay Area, the 2013 RTP, that land use data. Then they started incorporating general plans data, but that presumably was also in the original Plan Bay Area. But they reached out to the locals to get their general plan data. They then, I think about 6 months ago, sent to all the cities these 3 land use scenarios, and they wanted to know from the cities what scenario best represented your city and how your city plans to grow. So there were these 3 alternatives. Each city kind of checked a box whether which one represented them the best. According to MTC, the connected neighborhoods was kind of the most popular of the 3. And so then they kind of ran that through their land use model, and along with the PDA assessment that was done a year or 2 ago, where they did kind of a market assessment of what was going on in the PDAs and what was feasible in the PDAs. They put together the draft preferred scenario, which is what we're talking about today. UrbanSim is the land use model. Basically, it takes that general plan data and then looks at different kind of sets of data like developer profitability, allowable intensities, densities, and so forth. And UrbanSim then grows the cities, puts buildings where there might not have been buildings before, puts jobs around transit, so forth, and comes up with a scenario. So there are some changes from projections 2013, the Plan Bay Area, the 2013 RTP land use, and that was basically to correct the 2010 numbers for the U.S. Census, and especially for households. In employment, it's a little more slippery, and they had to use some different strategies to come up with a good number for 2010. But households are usually what most people are concerned with because employment is a little tougher to pin down, especially for cities to forecast how their employment is going to grow over time. They definitely have plans for how they want to grow, but if you ask the cities, they'll tell you it doesn't always happen the way they plan it to, whereas households are a little more predictable. So some of the strategies that ABAG and MTC used when putting together the draft preferred scenario. First thing, and very important to Contra Costa, was that they kept the urban growth boundaries intact. The no project alternative, they actually allowed the urban growth boundaries, or they allowed growth outside the urban growth boundaries. They allowed them to expand. We said that's not happening here, and I think others said that as well. So the preferred scenario keeps those growth boundaries intact, which is good. They apply inclusionary zoning in all the PDAs, and then associated with that, they assume that all for-profit housing developments have 10% of basically affordable housing units out of each development. They've increased densities, especially in PDAs in certain locations, probably mainly around BART stations. than the city's currently zoned for. And they've reduced the cost of building in the PDAs through more streamlined CEQA and reduced parking minimums. And they've also assumed subsidies for developing those PDAs. So here's back to those three geographies. Where will the 820,000 new households occur in the Bay Area between now and 2040? And I just want to note that the 2013 RTP only forecasted 700,000 new households in the Bay Area over that same time period. So they've increased the housing forecast by 120,000 units. So the majority is happening in the three big cities. Around the Bay, you're seeing a third of the growth and a quarter of the growth out in the inland areas. And the black there is the PDAs. 75% of household growth is going on in the PDAs. When you look at jobs, it's a little different. The majority of the jobs growth is going on around the Bay. Most of that is on the west side of the Bay, that large corridor stretching from San Francisco to San Jose. That's no surprise to anyone. And 52% of the growth is going on in the PDAs. So one of the main ways to get to the vision that the region has is by increasing the growth rate in households. As I mentioned earlier, with the enormous explosion in jobs, the housing production has been way behind. So increasing upon those 65,000 units that have been produced over the last 5 years is important for achieving the greenhouse gas goals, all the goals of the RTP and the Sustainable Community Strategy. So if you're looking at what this means to individual jurisdictions and what type of growth has to happen in your jurisdiction, they've broken it down to small cities under 50,000 people. I think most of us in the room are probably these small cities. So you're looking at an average of about 55 units produced annually per city. That's, for some of you, that's probably, status quo. For some, that's probably a lot. Same with the medium cities. Probably the rest of you are in medium cities. Probably most of you are closer to the 50,000 number than the 350,000 number. So producing an average of 310 units per city probably makes a lot more sense if you're, 300,000 population as opposed to 50,000 population. But it's kind of just to give you an idea. And then the big cities have to produce a whole lot more, but they've already got a lot of those in the pipeline. Here's just a look at all the counties and the growth. So there's those 820,000 units and 1.2 million jobs over the 24 years of the forecast. When it comes to spending the money on transportation, the majority of the money in the plan is scheduled to go to operate, maintain, and modernize our current system, while only 99% is aimed at expansion projects. I think that probably makes sense to most people. There's not a lot of big capacity increasing projects going on. Most of our money is going into operations and maintenance, especially on the transit side of things, but also on the highway side. So here's that broken down. So they've got three strategies for spending the money. Strategy one, operate and maintain, and $226 billion is going into that category. mainly transit operations, maintenance, local streets and roads, and bridge maintenance. So I think all of you have uses for that type of money. Caltrans and the cities and the transit providers benefit from all of that. Let's go to strategy 2. That's modernize. Most of this goes into kind of the core capacity. The core capacity, if you're not familiar, is basically getting people across the bay from the East Bay into San Francisco and the peninsula. The MTC has a major study going on right now that's looking at that, both the bridges and the transit services across the bay. So they've directed a lot of money towards that. Bike Ped program gets $3 billion. Goods movement, $3 billion. Caltrain electrification, $2 billion. And mobility and access programs, $2 billion, and BART. Metro, which is kind of like, if you're not familiar, it's focusing BART service in the core. It would allow trains to turn back, kind of like they do now here at Pleasant Hill. So they go between Pleasant Hill and 24th Street in the mornings. It would probably have trains going between Berkeley and Hayward, things like that, where it's kind of focusing more trains where there's more riders. Strategy 3 is the expansion. These are major expansion projects like high-speed rail, BART to San Jose, the extension from 4th and King for Caltrain to get to the new Transbay Terminal. And Silicon Valley is adding express lanes on Highway 85 and 101. Okay, so the draft preferred scenario does perform better than the no project alternative or the status quo, which is good. You'd hope that it would. It does 13 percentage points better on the greenhouse gas reduction, which is one of the main goals of SB 375 and the Sustainable Community Strategy, and AB 32. There's 12,000 fewer acres of greenfield production, mainly for housing. There's displacement is a huge issue this time around. Housing displacement. There's 63,000 fewer households that would be displaced, mainly in the PDAs in the draft scenario, and typical driver would spend 124 less on auto maintenance due to good street quality. So this is kind of hard to read, but I just wanted to throw these charts in here that show this is sub-regional household growth. The blue color is projections 2013, or the last RTP. The orange is the draft preferred scenario. So you can see that in West, Central, and East, and Contra Costa Tri-Valley, I've got the Alameda Tri-Valley and Contra Costa Tri-Valley separated out, since we always look at what's going on just over the county line. The Central, East, and West are growing at a much higher rate than previously. Tri-Valley, Contra Costa, slightly more. La Miranda is seeing a reduction in the housing production forecast, and so is Tri-Valley Alameda. And then when you look at the jobs at the RTPC level, you're seeing major job increases in Central and West, which is good for them. West, I know, has been trying to get more jobs and asking for more jobs, so it sounds like ABAC has listened. However, East County, where we need the jobs, there is basically no growth. La Miranda is not growing by near as much in terms of jobs. That I'm not sure if that's based on comments from the La Miranda cities, but probably has something to do with that. Probably with the previous numbers just being too high. Tri-Valley, in the Contra Costa section, I'll focus in on at the city level on this, but you can see there's major differences between the last RTP and this one in terms of job growth in that area, and we're not sure what's going on, but I'll get to that in a second. Alameda section of Tri-Valley is not growing near as fast. Okay, so here's city level households. Richmond and unincorporated and Brentwood are the big winners here if housing production is your thing. And I know, Richmond has been fighting for more, or has been pushing to produce more housing. So that is reflective of their plans. Most everything is pretty similar to last time. Most of the cities, it looks like a lot of comments from the cities have been reflected in these forecasts. But that's kind of why we're here today. Is if this doesn't reflect what you guys have in your general plans or what you guys have on the ground or in the pipeline, this is when you want to comment to the regional agencies and let them know. So here's the city level jobs forecasts. So I want to focus in real quick on San Ramon right here. The forecast shows them going down by 1,800 jobs in between 2010 and 2040. I see a member of that sub-region or that area shaking his head, and I think he's right. As soon as we saw these, we reached out to San Ramon and said, look at this, and we asked what they have in their general plan over the next 25 years. They have nearly 15,000 jobs forecast in the city, mostly in Bishop Ranch, and I think we all know Bishop Ranch is going to grow. That's Bishop Ranch's plan. They plan to rehab a lot of their existing buildings. They plan on building on existing parking lots. So they're definitely planning to grow. So, and an interesting thing about that, the city was forecast to decrease in the number of jobs by 1,800. In their two PDAs, they're forecast to decrease in the number of jobs from today by almost 3,500 jobs. So something's going on, and we've already notified MTC of this. MTC was here yesterday and kind of said, yeah, that doesn't look right. So, and the planning director from San Ramon was here, and so I think MTC got the point that something's going on in that, but we pointed that out because it was obvious. There might be others here that aren't as obvious to us, and that's why you'll want to comment, individually as cities or the county or transit agencies or whoever you may be. So that's what it looks like at the city level. And once again, Richmond is getting a lot of growth. And the other big growth spurt going on here is in Concord, and that's mainly due to their two PDAs, one of which is the Concord Naval Weapons Station. And so that's the land use summary. Now I'll just touch on the project side a little. These are our projects. These are our roadway HOV projects from the 2013 RTP. The projects, I know you can't see this very well, but the projects kind of highlighted in that orangey pink color are the committed projects. Most of those are under construction today or completed. The rest were projects on the financially constrained RTP list from 2013. These are the transit projects. We submitted projects that you have all submitted to us. We submitted those to MTC several months ago as part of the RTP call for projects. we were able to get all the projects we submitted successfully in the plan. We had to go through we didn't quite have to go through the compelling case process, but we were able to adjust the phasing of some projects or give them more information about projects, and they were able to keep those projects on the financially constrained list. So no projects that were intended to be in the plan fell out of the plan. I did want to point out some projects that aren't on either of these two maps that are now on MTC's RTP project list. Those are the transit improvements that came out of the I-680 transit study from last year, the State Route 4 operational improvements between 242 and Bailey Road. The State Route 239 is no longer on, or wasn't in the plan before, but we were trying to get it on, the full project on this time, but we decided to go with just a smaller portion of the project, what was known as the airport connector, now known as the Byron Highway Vasco Road connector. It's a small component of the big 239 project, but one that provides a lot of benefit to the residents of far east Contra Costa County and a lot of regional movements between San Joaquin County, Alameda County, and Contra Costa County. So that is now in the RTP list. EBART Phase 2 to Brentwood, not the entire project, but most of the planning, environmental, and design phases. And as part of that, the Brentwood Intermodal Station down at near south of Lone Tree Way, which would serve as an EBART station when that extension makes it down there. The Oakley Park and Ride down in the kind of downtown Oakley area. The I-80 high capacity transit improvements, or a portion of the funding for that is included. I just wanted to note that the 684, there's some confusion as how many phases were in the last RTP. Actually, all phases were in the last RTP, and all phases are in the new RTP. There are chunks of money set aside for complete streets across the county, for bike ped improvements across the county, and for kind of our innovation bucket of money, the connected vehicles technology funds. So there's a bucket of money set aside for that. One major project that is on this that is not part of the RTP is the I-680 direct access ramps project in San Ramon that, due to local opposition to the project, has been removed and is no longer part of the RTP. So, now onto the schedule. I just want to kind of summarize that the transportation side that we just looked at and the land use side we talked about earlier are what make up the core of the RTP. There's also the equity analysis that I didn't really get into today. If you want to read more about the equity analysis, I would go to the MTC website and look at their packet from last Friday. There's a full report on the equity analysis that was done, and results are mixed, I'll just say, but if you're interested, I would recommend that you take a look at the MTC ABAG Joint Committee packet from last Friday. So basically, any comments on the land use scenario are due to the regional agencies on October 14th. They are doing their outreach right now. As I mentioned, they came and spoke to our planning directors yesterday. They indicated they will be making what they call office hours available at the end of this month. If you'd like to go in and sit down with MTC staff in person, or you can do video conference if you have that technology. But basically, they are making themselves available in person to discuss the land use allocations. Also, if you'd like to sit down with CCTA staff, we can discuss that with you as well. We have the slightly more detailed census tract level data that we can look at. If your city has multiple census tracts, we can kind of parse it down into a little more detail for you. But really, they're looking for feedback on the city level forecasts and for the PDA level forecasts. So that, like I said, those are due October 14th. We'd encourage you, if you email or mail comments to them, that you copy us so we have an idea of what's going on. CCTA intends to issue a comment letter that points out some of the major differences that I pointed out earlier and some of the anomalies that I pointed out earlier, especially like the San Ramon one. There's some issues with the PDAs in El Cerrito that we'll point out, and as I mentioned, the difference between the modeling data and the city level data that didn't match. We're pointing all that out. So we will be probably taking a comment letter to our planning committee in October that we plan to transmit to the regional agencies, and we encourage you all to do the same. I can take any questions that you have on this.
Matt, as far as CCing CCTA staff, should it be you or?
Myself or Martin?
Okay.
John?
During the TEP development, county staff had a few conversations with Ross and Julie Pierce, and informally, at least, there was some support for the concept of a priority industrial area. Provide some policies and hopefully funding to protect what what industrial areas remain, so they don't turn over to residential, et cetera, and so we can have some diversity of job, the ability to create a diversity of jobs in the county. I guess, is that something that CCTA would be interested in communicating to MTC? I think the county will probably make comments along those lines.
Yeah, I can definitely discuss that internally, but I remember those conversations. I think, the authority would support that. So I'll put that down on my list of comments.
Hi, sorry. I know I just missed the introductions when I walked in, but I'm Stephanie Mack. I'm a planner with MTC. So I didn't work directly on this plan, but if you have any questions or comments afterwards or right now, I can try to answer them, or at least put them on my radar so I can pass them on to my colleagues.
Thanks, Stephanie. I thought you were still back in the office.
Anybody else? Are you looking for an action, or is this information only?
It says action, but there's no real action other than suggestions for comments in the comment letter. That it's really just to encourage you to review the numbers and to submit comments on your own.
Okay. Any other comments? Then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
I ran this place, we were out 20 minutes. It's his fault. It's the sheriff's fault. It's always the sheriff's fault. That's why we selected you.
I don't know. I know it is a big number, so $2 billion.
What is it right now?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. what was submitted in the previous plan, previous.
Right, I know. You can't even see it.
Yeah, well, maybe there is. Maybe it's just like a hair one. There's
So few.
like one jump.
So Oh, good. Oh, it's increased by 100 pounds.
Oh, that's why I couldn't see. Yeah, okay.
Noise. I'm not that sure. But sometimes it makes me feel good when I.
Okay, man.
Like my mom.
I'll sit. Oh, your mom's short. Like, I'll always talk to you, so yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Picking up all our conversations.
Oh my God.
That's how my mom is. She's.